3 minutes to do them. So today we're looking at this thing called rectangle, rhombus, and square. It's a fun day for me. I really like to nerd out on this stuff. It's going to be a kind of confusing day for you, but hopefully, because we're such a small number today, that we can have a good conversation with it. This only works if you converse with it. Right? Doesn't add to the class. So, do you know what a rhombus is?
Yeah, I've sort of
heard of it. So, can you describe to me what it looks like?
Is it like a square?
Like a diamond, right? That's most everyone says that a rhombus looks like a diamond. So, let me draw you a diamond.
Well, you didn't draw us.
Oh, well, what shape is that?
A square.
No.
No.
Quadrilateral.
That is only a quadrilateral. So what makes a quadrilateral a rhombus?
Just like that.
All equal sides.
You mean two opposite
So-
sides?
Are you saying this, Carlos?
Yeah.
What shape is that?
That's a
That's a parallelogram. That's a parallelogram because opposite sides are congruent. But as soon as I say that all four sides are the same, now it's a rhombus. You see how crazy this is going to get today? Okay, so at the minimum level, if I ask you what is a rhombus or what makes a four-sided figure a rhombus, if it has all four sides that are the same length. If it has four congruent sides, it is a rhombus. So this shape is a rhombus, but it's also a parallelogram. Are these two opposite sides congruent? Are these two opposite sides congruent? So by definition, because both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, it is a parallelogram. And once it's a parallelogram, what happens? It has all the parallelogram properties. So opposite sides are now parallel, opposite angles are equal, consecutive angles are supplementary, diagonals bisect. So all those properties we talked about Wednesday and Thursday apply to this new shape on Friday. But because it is a rhombus, it has its own specific properties.
That's a horrible shape and we should get rid of it.
Man, some of you guys are already checked out, right? This is a lot of stuff. So, this shape is a rhombus. Why is it a rhombus?
Because no one likes it.
All four sides are equal.
All four sides are equal. It has four congruent sides. So, let's explore what happens when we draw a shape with four congruent sides. You see these diagonals in here? Diagonals bisect. That's a parallelogram property. Those diagonals bisect at a very specific kind of angle. 90 degrees. So a very specific part of rhombuses is they bisect at a 90-degree angle. The diagonals are perpendicular. Okay? So let's make this a parallelogram. Let's say that this one is 100 degrees. Now, based on parallelogram math, if this angle is 100 degrees, how big is this one? 100. 100. Remember we did that yesterday and Wednesday? Okay. So if this angle is 100 degrees, how big is this one? 80. Consecutive angles have to add up to 180. So if this one's 80, how big is this one?
89.
80. How did you get 89? Okay, so is that a parallel? Are opposite angles equal? Yes. Are consecutive angles supplementary? Yes. So now let's get into the rhombus properties. The diagonal cuts this angle in half. So if this angle is 100, how big are each of these pieces? 50.
I was going to say something about that.
So if this angle is 100 and this diagonal bisects the angle, how big are these two pieces?
52s.
50 and 50. Now, what are these two small angles? 40 and 40. And what are these two small angles?
40 and 40.
Doesn't that just blow your mind?
Yeah.
What blows your mind?
No.
Oh, I don't. What are you looking at? I don't know. Oh, this or that? Oh, this? Do those 8 triangles just boggle your mind?
8.
8 triangles.
How is there 8?
Okay, let's look at the 8 triangles.
Oh, I see.
No,
No, I
no,
see.
no, no, no.
See it.
No.
Because he can do the.
No, wait, can I
he
see
do-
that? Can
he
I
can do
see
big
it?
one? Yeah.
How many degrees are in that pink triangle?
180.
90 plus 40 plus
I knew it.
50 is 180. Whoa, bro.
Okay, let me do it.
Okay, let's try something else. What about this triangle right here?
And then you can do
50 plus 50 plus 80 is.
180.
Now let's talk about this triangle specifically here for a second. How long is this piece?
So 180.
This leg
Oh,
right
wait.
here.
We don't
The
know.
exact same length as this one, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
So if this is 7, this one has to be 7. Well, doesn't that make that an isosceles triangle?
Sure.
And on isosceles triangles, aren't base angles equal? So now, diamonds are created by 2 isosceles triangles.
There's too many triangles.
Okay, that.
We also have this isosceles triangle right here.
Yeah,
Cool.
7, 7, base angles are equal. 40 plus 100 is 180. It's just a rhombus.
Yeah.
It's made like 8 new things from being one
I'm
shape.
saying for me, it's simple.
So you think about this very simple definition.
Kind of.
Very simple definition. 4 congruent sides. But once you have 4 congruent sides, it unlocks another whole spectrum of geometry that is applied to it. Do you kind of understand why paying attention throughout the year pays dividends now?
Yeah.
Thanks. So let's go through our notes and fill in the blanks so you can actually remember these properties.
Thank you.
A rhombus is a parallelogram with blank congruent blank.
4 congruent
4 congruent sides.
Can you good?
4 congruent blank.
6.4.
So that is the only thing that makes a rhombus a parallelogram. It has 4 congruent sides. A parallelogram or rhombus. Now the diagonals are blank.
Equal.
What?
Equal.
Bisect.
No.
Okay.
Bisect.
The diagonals are
R bisect.
perpendicular.
The angles are bisect.
Perpendicular.
The diagonals are perpendicular and they bisect a pair of
Congruent angle.
opposite
Opposite.
That's what I said.
angles. So the diagonals cut the opposite angles in half. And that was fun. 1 down,
13 more to go.
2 to go. So let's talk about a rectangle for a hot minute. Man, rectangles are easy, right?
Yeah, it's just.
No.
We haven't even told us the definition. Well, you said 2 opposite sides are equal, but that isn't parallel.
No, 2 opposite sides are equals a parallelogram.
And yeah, that's we haven't.
But I'm asking you what is a rectangle.
We don't know. You haven't told us.
You know what a rectangle is.
Parallelogram.
Yeah, but what makes a rectangle and not a parallelogram?
One side shorter, or 2 sides are shorter than one.
No, that's a parallelogram.
You hasn't told us yet.
How do you make a parallelogram a rectangle?
Show me.
The diagonals are blank.
No.
The angle.
No, think about it. Like
Four
we
angles.
just made a parallelogram a rhombus by making 4 congruent sides.
2
congruent sides.
pairs.
So if you make a rectangle, it has to have 4 congruent
Angles.
angles. So what shape is that?
Rectangle.
That's a quadrilateral.
Yeah, he doesn't give us the angles.
Is there any information in here supporting how big each angle is?
Oh.
Visual.
No.
Visual.
No.
Yes.
No.
So
There
we
is
have
not.
that cannot be 90.
So let's make it a rectangle.
Cool.
Now what is it?
You don't it's a
Quadrilateral.
parallelogram.
It's still just a quadrilateral. Okay, what about now?
So quadrilateral.
It is actually
Triangle.
something.
Parallelogram.
It's not a parallelogram.
It's a rhombus.
It's not a rhombus.
A square.
It's not a square. It's not a rectangle.
It's 90 degrees.
It's
a shape.
a polygon.
It's a trapezoid.
Wait, what?
It's a shape.
What's a triangle?
It's
A
a.
trapezoid.
It has two congruent angles.
Okay, it is a trapezoid because this angle and this angle are called same side interior angles. So because these are congruent same side interior angles, it forces this line to be parallel to this line. So the definition of a trapezoid is one pair of parallel lines. What you guys are missing is this line could look like this, couldn't it? That would make it a trapezoid. Alright, what if I do this? Now what shape is it?
Triangle.
Now it's a rectangle? I thought it had to have four.
No, it doesn't.
Well, you can't
It's-
change the other angle.
The lines are just
If
already
it's if the other three are 90 degrees, the other one has to be 90.
Why though?
because it.
Because otherwise it
goes-
goes-
They're crunchy uneven.
Perfect. So
You're not
Joey
gonna-
hits it on the nose. It has to equal 360 degrees because it is a quadrilateral. So 360 minus 90 minus 90 minus 90 equals 90.
Indeed.
Now what shape is it?
A rectangle.
Well.
Square.
It is a rectangle.
Okay.
Because it has four right angles, it is a rectangle. So a rectangle is a parallelogram, which means it has all parallelogram properties. Opposite angles are congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary, both opposite sides are congruent, both opposite sides are parallel, and diagonals bisect. Yes, sir.
Is it still considered a trapezoid?
No.
No.
Okay.
It is not.
We get rid of one.
Because-
You can think that.
Because I said that the first shape was a trapezoid because it had one pair of parallel sides, but the definition of a parallelogram is two pairs of parallel sides. That makes it a parallelogram trapezoid. Right? So, what is the one specific property that rectangles have?
Four
Four
angles
sides.
and then perpendicular.
Well, it is defined by its four right angles, but a specific property is that diagonals are. Do they look perpendicular?
Oh no, wait.
No.
They're bisect.
Diagonals are perpendicular is a rhombus property.
Yeah.
Congruent.
Diagonals are congruent. So what I'm trying to say is, if this whole red line is 10, how big is this piece? 5. And how big is this piece? 5. But a rectangle property says, if this whole diagonal is 10, how big is this whole diagonal? 10, because diagonals are congruent.
Indeed.
Now, believe it or not, I can give you one angle, and you can solve for the other 11.
Sure.
Wait a minute.
Let's try it. I'll give you this one angle right here.
20.
Now think about this. If this angle is 20, how big is the whole angle? 90. So what is 90 degrees minus 20 degrees? We already spoke.
70 degrees.
70.
Oh.
Not bad, right? This is the one that causes you guys a lot of trouble here.
180.
180 where?
Oh, I like this.
The inside one is 140.
Which one? This one?
No, the other one. Yeah,
No, it's 7. Wait, no, it's.
it's gotta be.
How are you getting 140? Where'd you get the other 20?
It's 1.
This one's 20?
Yes.
No.
Wait, no,
Right,
it's
you know
7.
why you're right.
Because it's.
Yeah.
Alright. I mean,
Because that angle is 90 degrees and that one's.
The reason that you're correct, and most people don't see it,
Oh, wait, you see it.
Well,
No, they're not alternate
I
interior
can
angles.
tell you.
It's because they're angles and
What kind of triangle is this pink triangle? It's an isosceles triangle. So because it's an isosceles triangle, base angles have to be equal.
So
That's why it is 20. And then and what you're doing is, if there's 20 degrees plus 20 degrees, that's 40 degrees. Inside of this isosceles triangle has to be
They
180.
got 140.
whoa.
Wait, so he was right.
He was right. But I wanted to make sure I knew why he
And
was
those
right.
insides are 40 because you got equals to 180.
So this one's
Could not
40.
explain that.
And then vertical angles.
Now, look at this triangle right here. What kind of triangle is this?
It's isosceles.
It's also an isosceles triangle because 5 and 5 and third side. It has two congruent sides. So opposite of the congruent sides are congruent angles. So if this one's 70, how big is this one?
30.
Are you kind of seeing a pattern?
Just fill in all of it.
20, 20, and then 70.
So by knowing one angle, you got the other 11. Isn't that cool? That's what your quiz looks like. That's what your test looks like. Just giving you one angle, solving for all the other ones. Not bad. Not bad. So a rectangle is a parallelogram with blank, right, blank.
Angles.
And the one specific rectangle property, diagonals are congruent. Alright, so let's get to our last shape. What is a square? No, 4 congruent sides is a rhombus.
Right.
Four,
It's a
Isn't it-
regular polygon.
4 congruent angles.
No, that's a rectangle.
It's a
But
regular
it's
quadrilateral.
both. It's both.
Whoa. You're saying
But-
you're
That's what I was
saying
And you have your little picture down here.
And then you cut me off.
I know I did.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're saying that a square is a shape
Has to have both.
with 4 congruent angles
What is that?
and 4 congruent sides. How is a square both of those shapes at the same time?
They
It
met.
is.
It's just so
They had
it's a
to
It is the love child of
They had
a
to-
rectangle and a rhombus. So a square is a rectangle and a rhombus.
Come on.
If you have two spaces.
So what shape is that?
Nothing.
That's a
Rectangle.
that's a
Oh,
which
It's a- it's
We
a
don't know what it
It's
is.
a quadrilateral.
quadrilateral. There you go.
Alright. Shh.
Trapezoid.
Now what shape
Rectangle.
is it?
Rectangle.
Now it's a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. Now what shape is it?
Square.
No,
Still
It's
a
wrong
Still a
there.
rectangle.
still a rectangle.
It hasn't changed, guys.
Still gotta be it. And now it's a square.
Now
Now
it's
it's a square.
Now it's the square because it has 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. Guys, a square is a rectangle, a square is a rhombus, a square is a parallelogram, a square is a quadrilateral, a square has all of those properties.
this is why you say a parallelogram is not always a square, but a square is always a parallelogram.
A square is always a parallelogram, but a parallelogram is not always a square.
Why does this one show two congruent, like, hair?
Like this one?
Got this.
Yeah, look, no.
Well, yes, but I should know.
Yes, you have to mark it and fix it. That's what I just did. Okay, now let's talk about a square. So a square has 9 different properties. Now the good thing about a square is the only way you can change a square is by changing how. What is the only way you can make a square look different? Can you change any angles in a square?
You can turn.
Don't all the angles have to be 90 degrees all the time? What was the only thing you can change on a square?
Give it a switch.
I can make it bigger or smaller, right? That's it. I can make it 5, 5, 5, 5, or 4, 4, 4, 4, or 3, 3, 3, 3. And I can't change anything else. So when you do this square math, what do I know about these diagonals?
Those are equal.
They are congruent because a square is a rectangle.
And the bisect.
And they bisect because the square is a parallelogram. What else do I know about the diagonals?
The angle in the middle of
Jewish kill.
That they intersect and they are perpendicular.
Yes.
I know that the diagonals are perpendicular because that shape is a rhombus. And that these diagonals do what to these angles down here? What does this diagonal do to this angle? It cuts it in half. It bisects it. So what is half of 90?
25.
What's that?
Is there ever any way to change that?
No.
So a square will always have 4 triangles in there that are 45, 45, 90 triangles.
And the middles will always be. Wait, can I
They're
get?
still isosceles
Hey,
triangles.
can I get the middle ones? I got
Oh yeah, because it's.
They're all 90s.
Yeah, I gotta mark them, mark.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can do is change this number out here, 6, 7, or 8. So let's fill in these blanks. A square is a parallelogram with
4
4
congruent sides
sides
and angles.
and 4 congruent
Angles.
angles.
If it doesn't,
So-
you need-
A square is both a blank and a blank.
Rectangle.
And
Rhombus.
rhombus.
Oh, wait.
A square is both a rectangle and a rhombus. So these are the rhombus properties. Diagonals are perpendicular. And bisect a pair of opposite angles. This is a rectangle property. Diagonals are congruent. So a square is just a combination of rectangle and rhombus. So we're going to do 3 questions and I'm going to stop. You ready?
Wait, what's before?
I'm
this?
assuming that's
Forming
2.
something.
It's 2.
Forming blank 45. Say AU.
All.
Oh.
A L L.
Oh.
All.
Oh.
All right, let's try this.
Wow.
All right, so what shape is this?
It's a
That's a
square.
rectangle.
That is a rectangle.
Oh, I saw it. That was
It is not a square. Cool? So this next portion is what shape
Because
is
it
it?
doesn't have the.
Correct. Absolutely correct. What shape is this?
Rhombus.
That is a rhombus because it has 4 congruent sides. What shape is this?
Square.
Square. Because it has
4
4 congruent sides
4 congruent angles.
and 4 congruent angles.
You get it, Carlos. Ready?
Alright, what shape is this?
Let's figure it out. Let's go.
Well, we have to know what shape it is before I can
A
do any
square.
math.
You
on
said
it.
you were going to ask 3 questions.
No, we're gonna math.
That
we don't
is
know
a,
because
parallelogram.
Well, it's
it's a quadrilateral.
Yeah,
That's
it
what we know.
we have to know exactly what it is before I can math it.
Trust me, it is.
Square.
It's not a square.
Rectangle.
Rhombus.
Rhombus.
How do we know it's a
Because
rhombus?
it says rhombus.
Thank you.
Oh.
So the point I'm trying to make here is you have to read the directions to know what the shape is before you can actually map it in. I know it's a rhombus. I know it has 4 congruent sides. I know diagonals are perpendicular, and I know that diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles. So,
145.
if this angle is 35 degrees, how big is the other half?
140. I thought I was saying 180.
No, it doesn't.
So, this angle is how big? 70 degrees. Now, according to your logic, Caden, it is a parallelogram. So if this angle is 70 degrees, how big is this one?
110.
110. Do those two angles add up to 180?
Yes.
Because it is a parallelogram. Now, this diagonal cuts the 110 degree angle in half. So what is half of 110? 55 and 55. And how big are all the angles in here? 90,
Oh.
90, 90, and 90. Now, what's going to happen on your homework is going to ask you how big are these two angles up here? Well, if these are 35, how big are these?
35.
These are also 35. Because opposite angles are congruent, and if this angle is 70, this angle has to be 70. So when you cut 70 in half, you get 35 and 35. If this angle down here is 110, how big is this angle up here?
110.
110. So when you cut those angles in half, you get 55 and 55. A great example of what you will see on your assignment tonight.
Yeah.
All right, let's skip to the next shape. What shape is this?
Rectangle.
Well, how do you know that?
Because it says rectangle.
Because it says it right there.
Is that why you're trying to hide it?
No, I'm trying to make it bigger so we can all see it.
Oh.
Okay, so let's math inside of this rectangle. If you know it's a rectangle, what's the first thing you should mark?
The angles.
Angles. How big are each angle?
90 degrees.
90, 90, 90, and 90. So if this whole angle is 90 degrees and 30 degrees over here already, how big is angle 1?
60 degrees.
60. Because 60 plus 30 is 90. Well, what about down here at the bottom?
That will also be 30. Wait, no. That's 60, so that means that one's
90 minus 60 is 30. Now I gotta figure out some way to get over there and figure out how big angle 3 and angle 4 are.
4 is 30.
Put the 60 next to the 30, like in. Okay, 60 is 4.
It have to be the same.
4?
That's 30 because
This is 30 degrees.
base angles equal each other.
Because
Oh.
this is an isosceles triangle. Remember that diagonals are congruent. So if this angle's 30, how big is angle 3?
60.
60. Right? So if angle 2 is 30, how big is this angle right here?
30.
And if then angle 1 is 60, how big is this one down here?
60.
Now let's go to the middle. 60 plus 60 is 120. There should be 180 degrees in that triangle.
So there's 41. 40.
So how big is this angle?
40.
Because 60 plus 60 plus 60 is 180.
I forget.
Alright, so how big is this angle right here?
60.
Right. So those two angles are linear pairs. The vertical angles are equal. Every triangle has 180 in it. Man, this is fun.
120.
Alright, last shape. What shape is this?
Whatever, square, a square.
Square.
It's a total square.
So because this is a square, it's also a rhombus, and it's also a rectangle.
All sides equal each other and
All sides are equal to each other, and all angles are equal
the
to
sides
each other.
don't help us too much, but the angles help us a lot.
So because this is a rhombus, how big is every degree in the middle of the shape? 90, 90, 90, 90, because diagonals are perpendicular. Now because this is a rhombus,
45.
this diagonal cuts this 90-degree angle in half. Or it's the exact same way we took the notes earlier. They're all 45 degrees at every
It's
vertex.
the same for all of it.
Same thing all the way around. So your homework tonight is number 1, number 2, and number 3, number 4, number 6. Hold on. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 13.
So those
1, 2, 3,
4 and 6.
5, 7, 9, and 13. A grand total of 6 questions. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 13. That is 6 questions total.
You will.
You what,
That's seven.
Mike?
It's only 6.
1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9.
13.
Yeah,
6
7.
questions.
7.
6.
7.
It's 6.
3, 5,